Okay, we got another video from Jordan Crowder. I like this guy. He talks about aliens and stuff all the time. This time he's talking about why did alien abductions peak in the 80s and 90s? I don't I have no clue. Let's find out why.
Hey friends, so why was the 1990s the peak for alien abductions around the world? Well, the answer might shock you. I've actually come up with 3 main reasons why the 1990s was the peak for alien abductions. So if you don't know, there's an agency called MUFON. MUFON has been tracking and compiling all of the data having to do with alien abductions and encounters since the 60s. Okay, so for 60 plus years, MUFON has been collecting this data, and they say that the 1990s is by far the peak for alien abductions. There's a bunch in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and it kind of ramped up, peaked in the 90s, and has gone down considerably.
Yeah, you really don't hear about alien abductions anymore, I feel like. Yeah, I mean, like, we see sightings. We definitely see sightings, but I don't really hear about like abductions anymore. It was definitely in the 90s. I definitely agree with that.
Since then. Now, why is that? Well, let's analyze this, because by zooming out and looking at this, it will give us a kind of idea, a peek into the intention behind these gray aliens and maybe what their purpose and mission is in this whole abduction scenario and phenomenon. Okay, so reason number 1, I think, is that in the 1990s, humans were pure. Okay, the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we kind of clumped that group together. They were pure, like pure blood more. We didn't have mass vaccinations. We didn't have GMOs in all of our food.
Dude, like, that's a wild theory. I actually agree with that. We are so unpure for so many reasons, not just vaccinations, but like poisoning in the food. Technology has been rotting our brain. OF, like, oh my God, such a good point.
We weren't doing any sort of CRISPR gene editing, any kind of genetic manipulation like that. We were pretty much just human. Okay, we were kind of at the top of our game. Our life expectancy was the longest, in history. We were pretty healthy. This is before the whole obesity epidemic and everything like that. We were, I know that, we smoked and drank and all those kinds of things, but overall, we lived longer and we were healthier in the 70s, 80s, and 90s than we are today, and probably than any time in history, if you just look at statistics with life expectancy and things like that. So we were doing pretty good, right? We're at the top of our game. So that's reason number 1, pure blood, pure human. Now, reason number 2 is because in the 90s, especially the 70s and 80s, but even into the 90s, it was before the digital revolution and before the surveillance really kicked in. So now we all have cameras all around our house, on our doorbell and inside our house, and everything's recording at all times. Even our phones are listening and everything. And that's pretty normal now, to have your whole house kind of bugged, right? And the whole world's kind of bugged.
Yeah.
But back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we didn't really do that. We didn't have a lot of this fancy technology, and even the stuff we had didn't work very good. We definitely didn't have cell phones. We definitely didn't have video cameras recording our houses at all times. So it was a lot easier for, like, let's say these grays to do these things, to go into people's houses and rooms and have these abductions. Whether it's consciousness-based and non-physical, or whether it's physical abduction, we don't really know. But in any case,
that's
now
true.
A lot of this stuff would...
It's also a reason why that a lot of people have been seeing more sightings, because like everybody has a phone. You can just, like, I see orbs and drones all the time. I just take my phone out and I just record it. Like, it's easy. Back in the day, it's like really only rich people had camcorders. Like, really back in the day. Like good camcorders that actually could record. Rich people. If you weren't rich, you would either have to have a job and save up money for it and really want it, or otherwise you wouldn't have it.
Would be captured in some way, audio or video. And even if it wasn't captured after an abduction, now what would people do? There is the stigma, of course, but get past the stigma of talking about this stuff, people would go on Twitter or whatever, and it's so much easier to go viral and broadcast this stuff to the whole world. Well, in the 90s, it was a lot harder to get your story out and to really spread news. So when these abductions were happening, most people just didn't say anything. They just didn't really have a way to get the stuff out, but now they do. Okay, so number 1, humans were more pure-blooded, real humans. And number 2, we weren't being tracked and surveilled and listened to and watched. We didn't have all these cameras everywhere that could have captured this stuff. Okay, and number 3 is it's before the singularity. So you got to think the intention. Let's zoom out. Why would the Greys be doing this? Well, there's so much data that kind of points to these are future humans, or at least a future human hybrid, that are going back in time and collecting genetic samples, information.
Whenever I hear future human hybrid, I always think of demigods. Because I usually think about like gods being aliens, because we just misunderstood them, so we labeled them gods. And when you say demigod, it's like combination of, you know, like Hercules, right? Combination of a god and a human. That's what I think of when he's talking about like the mix of a hybrid class of like alien and human is like a demigod.
Material for some sort of either hybrid thing, or they're that plus like studying our consciousness state, our emotions, or dreams, that kind of stuff, or their own consciousness repair, you could say. So I went into that in my video yesterday, but anyways, there is this like singularity that's coming up. That's not just a technological singularity, but also a consciousness and AI singularity, where you're going to start seeing this merging of like synthetic and biological, you know, material, and people are going to become less human and more sort of cyborgs. As definitely. People have artificial hearts and artificial organs, and
well, then they also had the chip, right? Elon's chip. Elon Musk came out with Neuralink, right? Which is awesome. It's helping people that are like paralyzed and stuff, which is great. But the more and more that happens, we're gonna have like phones in our head. We're not gonna be holding a phone. It's just gonna be like in your head, and you're just like, call so and so.
And eyes, and like, you know, we're able to implant like, you know, Neuralink chips and all this kind of stuff. This is happening already, and it's going to exponentially increase as we hit like artificial general intelligence, and then artificial super intelligence, and all these tools and things start kind of becoming possible and available and embedded into the human. Then we become less human at that point and more of some sort of a synthetic hybrid, and I think that is the birth of this new species, which will turn into the Greys. So if they're going back in time to study humans and to get genetic material from humans, this time period is when we are human. We're so human right now, right? But that's all about to change. So number 3, we're before the singularity. So if you are a Grey and you have to go back in time and get genetic information and study humans and their natural habitat and environment, right? When would you do it? I mean, I couldn't think of a better time than the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Yeah, I guess he's right. I guess he's right.
Real humans, get pure genetic information and material, and do it in a way to where you won't be photographed and videoed and recorded. 70s, 80s, and 90s. And that's what the data reflects. That was the peak for alien abductions. I think that's why. Let me know what you think. Have a beautiful day. Peace.
I think he's right. I think he's onto something. I think it's I don't like the pure concept is definitely an interesting thing I haven't thought about, but I have thought about the fact that like we have cameras now. That's the biggest thing. We have cameras now. It's being caught everywhere. Normal people are able to catch it. And before, the government could, like when you had like the Men in Black, right? The Men in Black would show up if you had like a video of something. That's because videos of these things were rare. So like they would like shut you up and stuff. But like Men in Black can't shut up everybody with a phone right now. Everybody has a phone. Poor, rich, doesn't matter. Everybody has a phone. People get phones for free from the government. It's you know, they can't stop what they're catching on camera nowadays. But the pure concept, that's pretty cool. What do you guys think about this? I know I got a lot of skeptics in my comments all the time. I believe in this stuff. I think a lot of history has been misinterpretations of what we have seen. And I think that we're all talking about the same stuff. Whether it's gods, angels, aliens, demons, I think we're all talking about the same stuff. I think we're just labeling it differently. Anyway, I'll catch you next video. Remember to stay positive. It'll always work out.